Hello, you are on channel Real Books, and today we'll talk about Romanticism and its concept, characteristics, and key ideas. Romanticism is a concept that refers to the ideological and artistic movement of the art of the 18th and 19th centuries. Within the framework of this trend, a new ratio of irrational and rational components is fixed. Romanticism in literature offers a different attitude to freedom, consciousness, and nature. Further, we will consider the features of Romanticism and the key characteristics and ideas of this art movement. And we will begin with the history of the Romanticism emergence. The literary movement of Romanticism is distinguished by a new system of such values: celebration of artistic creativity, superiority of imagination and dreams over the rational component, and glorification of nature. How did Romanticism appear? The history of the birth of this movement is associated with 1790s. The first Romantics are rooted in Germany. After the emergence in German culture, Romanticism spread throughout Europe. Nothing appears from scratch. This is the truth, which is applicable both to physics and literature. And what are the prerequisites for the movement emergence? Therefore, it is necessary to find out what the prerequisites for the development of Romanticism were. Firstly, philosophers and artists have felt the impact of the rationalism crisis. In the Age of Enlightenment, this trend prevailed in European culture. However, the events of the French Revolution demonstrated the illusory nature of the old ideals. Secondly, the freedom movement during the Revolution did not justify the efforts and sacrifices of the participants in these events. The overthrow of the monarchy was followed by the hostilities, the struggle for power, and the terror of Jacobins. Thus, Romanticism is a consequence of the collapse of faith in revolutionary ideals, the result of disillusionment with the revolution. Researchers consider 1789 to be the year of Romanticism birth, with no doubt. And now we will talk about European Romanticism. The first phase of Romanticism in Germany is General Romanticism. It developed from the works of philosophers. Soon, Romantic ideals spread to art, including literature. The systematizers of this movement's ideas are Schlegel and Schelling. What are the features of German Romanticism? The Brothers Grimm's works, Hoffmann's tales, and Heine's poetry are distinguished by the following characteristic features: interest in subject matters and images from fairy tales and mythology, attention to folklore, rejection of classicism, conflict with bourgeois aristocratic ideals, style innovation, appeal to the heritage of the Renaissance, interest in personality in all its diversity. Now we'll talk about an English Romanticism. In the 18th century, England faced a romantic denial of capitalism. The Romantic trend here was embodied in such genres as political utopia, economic manifestos, and literary texts. Walter Scott's novels and Thomas More's works went down in history. The following features are typical of English Romanticism: popularity of the horror novel, problem of a beautiful personality and an ugly, prosaic reality, contradictions between dream and life as a key theme in romantic works. Now we'll talk about features of French Romanticism. The soil on which Romanticism flourished in France is the French Revolution, the clash of the dreams of the individual and the reality of class conflict. Initially, the political motives of the innermost life of the heart originated in Rousseau's philosophy. In general, French Romanticism emerged late. Experts explain this fact by the stormy social activity of that period. The romantic expression of will poured out in practice, and not in the theory of the literary text. Romanticism gave rise to the hypertrophy of the inner world, which was not needed in revolutionary times and events in France. The bourgeoisie, satisfied with the results of social upheaval, did not form a romantic dream. The French at that moment had not yet faced the contradiction between dreams and reality. Stages of formation of Romanticism. It was most vividly expressed in German lands. Germany is the birthplace of Romanticism itself. Subsequently, it influenced all European states. However, Denmark, Sweden, and Holland did not feel the active effort of Romantics. Outside of Germany, the Romantic movement drew energy from Goethe's work, the ideological inspirer. Although this writer is not a romantic, Goethe's name is associated with Romanticism. In fact, Goethe is a realist. German Romanticism went through 3 stages of development. However, these stages can be considered a common path of the movement development as a whole. So, first step. This period is characterized by democratic features, mixed with political radicalism. It can be seen that contrast is an inherent characteristic of Romanticism. The revolutionary spirit at this stage is abstract in nature, with reference to the French Revolution, the Jacobins, and so on. The trait acquired the greatest form in the work of German writers. In England, romantic traits manifested themselves in Blake's works, as well as in the works of Lake writers. Second phase. The next period in Romanticism development is related with a feeling of disappointment in the revolution, previous ideals, social changes, and politics. Philosophers and writers are moving away from the political sphere. Romantics move into the realm of fantasy and free creativity. This stage is associated with the emergence of the concept of the artist-creator. Stage 3. Romanticism finally turns to reaction. Disappointment in revolutionary upheavals reaches its climax. Fiction and complete withdrawal into the world of imagination also weighs on romantics. Creativity appears to writers as a fruitless activity. The romantic individual turns to superpersonal forces, the people and religious faith. Romanticism draws the philosophers' and politicians' attention to the problem of the formation of national states. However, romantics accept the possibility of compromise and even cooperation with the authorities. Loyalty to the ruler now seems possible for the representatives of Romanticism, but such loyalty and devotion is based not on fear, but on call of the heart. Now we'll talk about features of Romanticism in Russian Empire. Experts call this period in the history of Russia the Romantic stage, and they are right. However, paradoxically, Romanticism is not the leading movement of art and literature of this period. Pushkin's and Gogol's works are outside the Romantic trend. Rather, the foundations of realism are gradually being laid in the works of these authors. The decline of Romanticism is recorded in all countries, both in Europe and in Russia, almost at the same time. Literary critics sometimes see signs of emerging Romanticism in Zhukovsky's works and in the work of the late Sentimentalists. And yet, there are several features in the Russian Romantic trend. Liberation from the conventions of classicism. Romanticism arises as a reaction to classicism, do not forget it. Emergence of a romantic ballad. Development of romantic drama. Approval of the new view of the poetry essence and meaning. Poetry is an independent sphere of activity and life. Poems express the highest people's aspirations. Poetry is no longer viewed as an ordinary fun literary toy. And finally, demonstration of the hero's suffering and loneliness. Romantic literature branches into a couple of directions. Psychological texts, this flow is based on the representation of emotions and experience of the character, and civil works. In this case, the emphasis is on the fight against a modern society. Romantic writers were united by a common and main idea for this movement. The writers need to follow the ideals declared in works. Lermontov's A Hero of Our Time and Gogol's The Night Before Christmas are considered to be the brightest texts created in the framework of the Romantic trend in Russia. Sentimentalism versus Romanticism. What is the innovation of Romanticism in comparison with Sentimentalism, the previous movement? The merit of sentimental writers is the discovery of the ordinary people's emotions. Prior to that, it was believed that emotional experiences and high feelings are the privilege of exclusively aristocrats, the upper class. However, peasants, merchants, and other representatives of non-blue blood also love, suffer, rejoice, and so on. But there were also shortcomings in sentimentalism. Thus, the description of the emotional sphere within the framework of sentimentalism is limited to the statement of feelings. Romanticism, on the other hand, makes an important remark. Feelings are a complex area that requires a special approach. The statement is not longer enough here. Romanticism delves into a detailed study of human character. Romantic writers emphasize the complexity of the personality. So, people often do not understand and do not explain their own actions. This is the sphere of the irrational principle. Sentimentalists, on the other hand, showed personality in black and white. Among the entire palette of emotions, writers of this trend gave preference to only good or bad feelings. Now let's discuss romantic hero. Romanticism looked at human personality from a different angle. In a new paradigm, different from the flat view of sentimentalism, romantic heroes became the subject of heated debate. So, Lermontovsky-Pechorin demonstrates both positive and negative sides. Another example is Pushkin's Onegin. The hero does not give the reader the opportunity to evaluate his actions unambiguously. In Romanticism, the hero is no longer the subject of the public sympathy and antipathy. The feelings, actions, relationships, and experiences of the characters are in the center. It is the emotional sphere that becomes the subject of readers' evaluation. Human nature, inner world, and intentions are dubious. Thus, Romanticism pushes sentimentalism off the literary pedestal. Literature is losing a non-ambiguous assessment of the heroes as exclusively positive or negative. It's time to sum it all up and talk about the main features of the Romantic movement. The central place in the works of Romanticism is given to the person. The romantic hero acts in a hostile world, opposing society. The universe of the work within the framework of Romanticism is special, unusual, and fundamentally different. The hero often travels to exotic places. Romantic characters sometimes create their own fantasy worlds. The events of the works are set in unusual sites and countries. An important characteristic of literary Romanticism is the double world. The movement creates two worlds, real and fantastic. The hero seeks to escape from the real world, but this is impossible. A distinctive feature of Romanticism is the tendency of escapism. The fantastic world is the imagination, the place where the hero escapes from the reality. The romantic hero often feels hopelessness and disappointment. The character is accompanied by a constant tragic duality. The reason lies in the impossibility of realizing his intentions. The hero feels dissatisfaction with the current situation. Characters within Romanticism are distinguished by isolation, constant sad mood, anxiety, and desire to run away. These traits are called the classic, traditional characteristics of the romantic heroes. The peculiarity of the Romantic movement is the expression of the conflict of ideals and dreams with the actual state of affairs. And such a conflict is also embodied in the loneliness of the heroes. That was all. Thanks for watching.